There are two entirely different ways to play the global trade game. The first way involves private jets, a billionaire entourage, massive media spectacles, and loud public demands. The second way happens quietly, behind closed doors, driven by data, predictability, and long-term strategy. For the past few months, Washington tried to convince the world that the loud way was the only way, even going as far as to publicly mock Canada for trying a different approach. But a stunning turn of events in Beijing just exposed a massive shift in global power. While one superpower arrived with a media circus and left with empty promises, a quieter competitor walked away with the actual keys to diversification. Tonight, we look at the silent geopolitical flip that the Trump administration desperately does not want you to notice.
While China stressed the issue of Taiwan, Trump was really hoping to focus on the economy and trade. A who's who of American business leaders and tech leaders, including Elon Musk, Apple's Tim Cook, and Nvidia's CEO Jensen Huang, joined the president on the trip. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said there are lots of areas where the two countries can do business.
There are plenty of things that the Chinese could invest in the U.S., and we're trying to push the same thing in the U.S. President Trump today told Xi Jinping that he wants to open up China, and China should open up. China's domestic economy has been weak.
To understand how humiliating this moment is for the U.S. administration, we have to look at what happened just a few months ago. When Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney initiated a strategy to diversify Canada's trade portfolio away from total reliance on the United States, Washington panicked. High-ranking U.S. officials, including Howard Lutnick, launched an aggressive public relations campaign to shut it down. They mocked Canadian economic capability, claimed China would never cooperate, and pressured Ottawa to remain economically dependent exclusively on the American market. The message from the White House was clear. Canada stays in its lane. But this wasn't about protecting Canada. This was about control. Washington knew that if Canada successfully built alternative economic lifelines, the U.S. would lose its massive leverage over Canadian resources.
Well, I think Prime Minister Carney, as all other Western leaders are, and everyone else are watching very closely what will be the final results of this visit. This is a very important visit, the first visit by a U.S. president in 9 years. The last one was also by Donald Trump. But I must say that so far, it seems that we are just getting little results because we have heard that Donald Trump has put the emphasis on trade. And before he went to Beijing, he kept talking about the 5 Vs, soya beans, beef, a new board of trade, Boeing planes, and a new board of investment. But even for Boeing airplanes, it seems that there won't be any final announcement. And in fact, for us, we have to hope that there will be some kind of agreement between Beijing and Washington to at least maintain the status quo, or better to improve relations, because we all know that supply chains are deeply integrated around the world, and it's very difficult to cut links with China.
Fast forward to right now. The exact same administration that told Canada to avoid Beijing just booked a massive, desperate flight to China. Donald Trump didn't go alone. He brought a literal who's who of American corporate power: Elon Musk, Apple's Tim Cook, Nvidia's Jensen Huang, and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Why the sudden change of heart? Because behind the tough talk rhetoric, the U.S. economy is feeling severe pressure. Tariff wars are biting back, domestic inflation is climbing, and American supply chains are fracturing. Washington desperately needed a massive economic win to stabilize things at home.
Paradox, Donald Trump is obviously trying to get as many deals as possible. We heard Secretary Bessent, who was talking about the increased Chinese investment in the United States. And so there's not much difference between what Prime Minister Carney was trying to achieve during his January trip. I think, in fact, we have to watch very closely what will be finally agreed because if, as expected, there are increased sales of American agricultural products to China, it may impact on our own trade because we are competitors in terms of beef, pork, or seafood export, and soybean, soya, and canola are in competition. But the other thing that I will be watching closely is whether Donald Trump invites Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers to come in the United States. If he were to say so, obviously it would be more interesting for Chinese manufacturers to go to the U.S. than to come to Canada.
Despite all the theatrical hype, Trump's mega summit yielded virtually no structural breakthroughs. They begged for agricultural access and investments, but left with little more than polite nods and vague diplomatic promises. Why did the American billionaire blitz fail while Canada succeeded? The answer comes down to a fundamental misunderstanding of global diplomacy. Former diplomats and trade experts point out a critical reality. Global superpowers, especially China, do not value economic volatility. They operate on decades-long horizons. They require stability, predictability, and rules-based consistency. Trump's signature style is built on unpredictability, threatening tariffs one week, collapsing talks the next, and making sudden emotional demands on social media. To a long-term economic planner, that isn't strength. It's chaos. Meanwhile, Mark Carney's reputation on the global stage is the exact opposite. He is viewed as pragmatic, calm, and hyper-strategic. When Carney went to China in January, he didn't bring a media circus to show off. He brought a predictable framework for mutually beneficial trade diversification. And that is exactly why Beijing opened doors for Canada that they kept firmly shut for Washington.
Well, I think this is an easy one for the Chinese. I think the Chinese want to make a success of this visit. They have been very concerned about the chaos that Donald Trump has created, and to achieve their objectives, the Chinese need an international environment that is predictable, where the rules are applied, even if they don't respect the rules themselves. But they are very concerned about the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, and they will want to satisfy Trump. And it's easy to increase those imports, but again, we may pay
This entire saga reveals a profound shift in how Canada is navigating the world stage. For generations, Ottawa acted as though it needed permission from Washington to conduct global business. Carney's administration is changing the rules of the game. Canada is signaling that it will unapologetically pursue its own national interests, building resilient, multilateral partnerships across the globe, whether Washington likes it or not. The irony is absolute. The very strategy the U.S. mocked Canada for executing is the exact strategy they just tried and failed to copy. As the global landscape fractures, the world is realizing that quiet strategy outlasts loud spectacle every single time. Subscribe for more.